Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review, and don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast. And we are recording Contrarians Corner for the upside.
Hello and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Episode number 94, as we inch ever so closely to the elusive episode 100, and also into our 6th year.
Right. This is our last episode of year 5.
We started in 14?
Yeah, because we celebrate.
Yeah, we're going into year 6.
Oh, God.
I'm going to die someday. Here we are continuing the autumn of remakes.
We were a whole 5 years younger when we started this, Alex.
There's a lot of things that were different about me then. That was also about 50 pounds ago. For me, at least. You've maintained your svelte Peruvian build.
I've gone up and down like the roller coaster that is this movie.
You've gone up and down like the speeds on the wheelchair in this movie.
Exactly.
Continuing the autumn of remakes, we are here today to discuss, dive into, dissect the 2019. I forgot it came out this year.
Yeah.
Because it's been in the can for like 2 years.
Has it? Really?
Yeah. It's been done, and I knew it had been done for a while. I couldn't find in my research, just very small bit of real talk before we get into this. I couldn't find why that was. I assume just, well, I'm not going to answer my own question. It was a Weinstein.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Either that or Trump became president. He's like, no.
Equality.
What is this?
We're here today to talk about
Don't give him any ideas.
The Upside, released in January of this year. This is probably our closest release to recording that we've ever done.
As far as an official episode, I mean, we did talk about Gotti pretty much the month after it came out.
Well, we did
that
like
was not like
a half-hour review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood also.
And Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Oh, don't remind me. Here nor there. The Upside is the American import or the port of the French film that we covered in our last numeric episode, The Untouchables. Story of a quadriplegic man who needs a caregiver to take care of him. Because if foreign language films aren't your thing, you'll just wait. Someone will make it in English. There's a really good chance Kevin Hart's going to be in it. And
now there is, maybe.
Stars Bryan Cranston, Nicole Kidman, and Kevin Hart. He's here. So,
is this directed by Michael Haneke?
You're off to kind of stealing my joke already, stealing some of my thunder. This is directed by Neil Berger, known for other such timeless films as Limitless, Divergent, and The Illusionist, which that was released around the same time as the
Prestige.
The Prestige,
yeah. It was. I'm sorry, Ed Norton, but that was the poor man's The Prestige.
So, not as highly revered as its French counterpart. This is, I believe, somewhere around 40% now. If this is your first time listening to the Contrarians, first of all, we do appreciate your listen as always. To give you a quick rundown of what we do here, our mantra is we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. Find a movie that is highly ranked on Rotten Tomatoes, make a case for why it shouldn't be. We take it down a few pegs, find a nasty green splotch of rotten movie, and talk about the positive merit of it. All in a sense to kind of point out the inherent flaws with the Rotten Tomatoes system, but also prove that you can be over the moon about anything if you really want to.
Or you can be really cynical about everything. In this case, it's a rotten movie. We're going to talk about it if it was fresh. If it was a fresh movie, we talk about it if it was rotten. And then, in the second half of the show, Real Talk, we'll tell you how we really feel. Sometimes it matches, sometimes it doesn't. I've been getting some texts from Alex, so I kind of have a hint of how he really feels about this movie.
Yeah, typically we watch movies together, but for the sake of time, we both watch this on our own time, sake of time. See how many times I can use time in a sentence. What I was getting at, though, is typically the movies we do are a bit more to the extreme on their side of the coin. The original, The Untouchables, being at 75%. We usually stick between like 100 and like the high 80s.
Yeah, high 80s and then low 30s.
Yeah, and for this, the upside, it is rotten, but it's at 40%, which we kind of tend to go a bit lower than that.
But we had a gimmick, damn it, and we wanted to.
Oh yeah, it worked
make
perfectly.
This play into it.
With that in mind, it is a rotten movie on the old RT. So, what were these critics griping about?
All right, so I got a handful of rotten quotes from Rotten Tomatoes, starting with Eli Glasner from CBC News Network. He says, "This is a movie filled with a painfully obvious story and manufactured mawkish moments. It doesn't just pluck our heartstrings, it trashes a power chord." Ruben Peralta Rigaud from Cocalecas says, "Following a drama as moving as The Green Book, The Upside offers a slightly similar version of the same type of formula without the sophisticated gravitas."
Wait, we're calling Green Book a sophisticated gravitas? Or possessing sophisticated gravitas?
Our friend Ruben, he definitely, he is saying either, well, this movie makes Green Book look good, or this movie's not as good as Green Book.
I'll hold my tongue until the second half.
I plead the fifth.
The fifth.
Kristen Lopez from Forbes says, "Perpetuating the idea that people with disabilities are entitled fat cats isn't a good look."
Jesus.
Kristen, I don't know that out of all the things you could complain in this movie, I don't know that this is the thing. Like, that's the hill you're gonna die in.
He's just a rich snob, like that's also apparently. Yeah, sorry, Kristen, you're on an island with that one.
And finally, Kath Clark from Time Out.
You're on the shelf with the original cut of this movie.
Kath Clark from Time Out says, "The suggestion, even in a crowd-pleasing comedy, that America's racial divides can be bridged by Pavarotti and a joint is downright Stone Age."
I also get the impression, just by off those one sentences, there's a very good chance the people that wrote those reviews had no clue there was a French movie that this is based on. So, right to it, my research obviously wasn't too deep because I was able to find on the Wikipedia page here exactly confirming what I thought may have been. The film premiered at the 2017 Toronto Film Festival, originally to be distributed by the Weinstein Company. In March of 2018, the film was shelved and sold off following something happened with Harvey Weinstein, sexual abuse. Jesus.
Wow.
First I'm hearing about it.
Might want to look into that before we do any other Harvey Weinstein produced movies.
It was eventually bought by STX Entertainment and Lantern Entertainment, the successor of TWC, who then released it in the United States on January 11, 2019. So that makes sense. I wonder how many other movies there were that were shelved because of that.
That they're like, we're not going to taint this with the TWC logo in front of everything.
It's fair. I mean, through no fault of anyone in this movie, if they had released it at that point in time, it probably would not have done the box office just because of the name on it.
I mean, rotten or fresh, you cannot argue that it's meant to be a crowd pleaser. Nothing says
you
crowd
don't
pleaser.
Say.
Like the TWC.
Yeah.
To put you in a good mood.
So, The Upside features our two main characters residing in New York City. We have Kevin Hart playing Del Scott and the quadriplegic Philip Lacasse. They say their last names like once or twice in it, but Walter White, Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. So it's
Malcolm's dad.
Kevin Hart playing Omar Sy, the American version of Omar Sy, and Walter White playing, the American version of that dude that he's a character actor in France. But
Francois.
He never made it to the X-Men, so really we don't know his name.
He didn't play Bishop in the X-Men, so fuck it. Now it's going to bother me. I'm going to look up his name. Francois
Cranston.
Cluzet, who was Philippe.
This was Philip.
And I'm guessing Del is the American version of Dries, which was Omar Sy. So it's going to be a lot of repeating ourselves on this one. So I figured we'd kind of walk through the plot since we already went through it in the last episode, but then kind of focus on where things
What's
differ.
different?
Yeah.
Basically, all the improvements
Yes.
that America made into this French little movie.
All just like with food, how we add cheese and bacon to it. We find it anywhere else in the world. And
Lots of bacon and
yes,
cheese
have
in
been
the
added to
movie.
this.
Yeah, the
That's-
good kind though.
Complete sidebar, but back before we had cable in my house, I used to watch the British feed of television shows that I wanted to watch, and specifically Monday Night Raw. And I remember once a year they would have America Week at McDonald's in Britain, and it was literally they just added bacon to everything on the menu. America Week.
You could drink
bacon.
a diet tea, and you get discounts with extra sugar.
Sweet tea. New York City. We're opening in the exact same fashion that we did here in the French movie, the French film, with the character of Del, Kevin Hart, driving a very nice Ferrari, and he's got his passenger, a bearded Bryan Cranston in it, weaving in and out of the streets of New York City in a very reckless fashion.
Like a madman. And here's the thing where, movie making and movie watching has become such a complex. I guess it was always complex, but now with the advent of technology and how we're all interconnected, it kind of expands your horizons and makes you aware of how just nothing exists in a vacuum. And so even though it's almost shot for shot a replication of the French movie, number one, you're setting it in America. Number two, it's being watched by Americans, or whatever you want to call me, like a hybrid.
You're an American.
I guess by now,
You got your citizenship.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the experience of growing up in America. I mean, I've by now, the second half of my life has been spent in America. So I guess, I do have that experience to draw from. So the thing is, the experience of seeing a black man driving a white dude like a madman in traffic, being stopped by the cops, and then the cops slamming that black man down on the front of the car, it plays so very differently depending on all those little things. Like, is this happening in France? Is this happening in New York? Is it being watched by a European person? Is it being watched by somebody from America? So that was like the first thing that I thought just from the beginning of the movie. We're like, am I going to experience all the entire movie like this, where I'm watching a carbon copy, but just because it's a different setting, it's a completely different experience. And thankfully, it was more than that. I mean, the movie just used that as a springboard to do to basically deal with race in America in the Trump years.
As he's being arrested, though, the difference here is
the MAGA hats.
Neil Berger, the director. For those of you who don't really enjoy subtlety,
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, well, mistake number one, real talk. No, we're not starting this off with September by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
You don't need it. You have Kevin Hart. Omar Sy was an unknown, so you needed the backup of the music. But he is Kevin Hart. You just need
just
Kevin
let him
Hart.
riff. But yeah, if you're a fan of subtlety, I think Neil Berger is not the director for you. I think he plays more to the mainstream that kind of need, things to be a bit more obvious here, and you can't fault him for it. That's why this opening scene here, it plays out where they play the cops. It's a bit more, there's no suspense to it. It's just, we're playing along here. We're wink, wink, nudge, nudge, as Kevin Hart all but winks at him and tells him to fake a seizure on the spot.
But I think that's good too, because Cranston is not Philippe from The Untouchables. Cranston, he gives you a different personality, even by saying the same line sometimes, or even being framed at the same shot as in the original movie. With Bryan Cranston, you need that wink. You need to make him complicit, because Cranston is a less passive Philip than in the original. So he needs to be in the game.
Needs to be convinced. I mean, he is a disabled person, so he is an aristocratic fat cat after all.
He fights back a lot more than original Philip.
OP
Phil.
But much like in the French film, Philip fakes a seizure so they can get out of this situation with the cops. They pull up to the emergency room and go off, and then we see a title card 6 months earlier, in which Philip was released from the hospital after a health scare. It's at this point we're introduced to I'm trying to remember exactly what she is to him. His assistant?
Executive. I think he calls her his executive a lot. Several times during the movie.
Personal assistant. Yeah, so I guess it could be potentially executive to his estate as well. Nicole Kidman gracing us here as Yvonne. Nicole Kidman comes up a lot on here. I'm trying to remember other times that she's graced. Bewitched, obviously. Not the same in terms of upbeat and fun and, comedic, but she definitely brings the powerhouse performance here.
Yeah, Berger brought the big guns here because I wouldn't say there's less female characters in this version, the American version, but it's more like they combine them all into the Nicole Kidman character. Kind of like to
She's
give
a
her
composite
more...
character. She's the Rock in Pain and Gain.
Yes. Yeah, she gets all the tiny characteristics from the French movie, different French female characters. They just added them up into Nicole Kidman to make a fully fleshed female character, which was what we really needed.
Yeah.
So here she gets an arc, she gets drama, and so does Philip too, because this sort of opening after the opening is him sort of chastising her for not letting him die.
Yeah.
I guess he's ready
Lieutenant
to go.
Danzer.
Yeah. He has I guess everybody has signed an NDR. He's not supposed to be resuscitated after a certain point, and yet she took him to the hospital, and he's mad about that.
Dell is fresh out of prison and is looking for a job. Much like the Dries character in the French film, he's just kind of going from place to place getting signatures so he doesn't violate his parole and go back to prison, just to show that he's out there trying to find a job. He ends up applying for this job unknowingly, thinking it's janitorial work.
Right. It's a mix-up. But see, this is something... It reminds me a little bit of our experience with the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where it was almost as if they'd listened to the episode that we did on the original, and then the remake sort of tried to address our concerns.
Went back in time.
Yeah. There's some sort of weird time loop from Contrarian fans, directors that are just like modifying their films. I remember complaining about the issues with... I just had a hard time figuring out how the French system worked, as far as like, you just get signatures, you just get assigned whatever. The way in which Omar Sy ended up working for Philippe in the original was a little contrived. Here, it is 100% acknowledged that Kevin Hart is not supposed to be there. He just kind of gets off on the wrong floor, right? He is supposed to be there for a janitor job, but then he ends up following the dude that's applying to be Philip's caretaker, and just assumes that that's where he's supposed to be. And they're very much aware pretty quickly that he's not supposed to be there, and then it just becomes a matter of Cranston deciding to take him on because Cranston has a death wish. Yeah.
And Cranston's character here is a curmudgeon. It's played up almost for to the point of caricature. I have in my notes here, especially this scene, the montage of all these fucking dorks applying for the job. This movie establishes, if you've seen the French one, you're gonna know that this is way more lighthearted. Even the music in the background is just, like boom 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 boom.
There's the guy that says, I want to, how is it, like, where you end and I begin?
I want to be your hands. And then the other guy asks for an autograph, and
yeah, because he's an author, which I appreciated. Again, here in the French version, I have no idea what that guy did. I just knew that he was in a wheelchair. Here, Cranston, I can tell you things about his character. I know exactly how he ended up getting into an accident. I know what he used to do for a living. I know why he makes money, why he still has money. It's a much more fleshed out character than in the original version.
But, no American remake would be complete if we didn't crank up the comedy and lightheartedness to 1,000 on this, because we're only dealing with some serious issues here, so why not allow hilarity to ensue? I mean, you have Kevin Hart, after all.
Why would you waste him in a dramatic role?
He barges in here, and I got a little ahead of myself on the notes, because my response was, no pussyfooting around. He gets offered the job on the spot. Let's get to this. Let's bingo bango, not like that French bullshit. But he actually declines it. He comes in and just... I don't know if it's a fit of hubris or I think it's more rebellion that Philip's trying to rebel against Yvonne, Nicole Kidman's wishes for him, and is like, hey, I'll give this guy the job.
Right. He just likes that Kevin Hart in the French version. It's pretty subtle and almost not well defined enough that the reason that Philippe likes Omar Sy is that, oh, well, he doesn't treat him differently. You know, he was disrespectful to him the way that he would be disrespectful to somebody that's not in a wheelchair. But it was kind of weird.
Very curt.
Right. It was kind of weird, and it was almost, again, it goes back to the French version being so passive, that guy. Here, Cranston, he's already shown that he has character. We saw him complaining that he was still alive. So it really makes a much stronger impression when he decides to go against Nicole Kidman's wishes and just hire this guy who's just an ass, right? Kevin Hart is a lot more crude when he's hitting on Nicole Kidman, when he's just making observations about Cranston being in a wheelchair, but also what makes him 1,000% more charismatic and more sympathetic than Omar Sy is that he's actually in a hurry because he needs to go pick up his kid.
Yeah.
Omar Sy had no reason to have a sense of urgency about anything. He just,
his time was valuable.
Yeah, he was just like, well, I need the signature, you know? But Kevin Hart is actually looking for a job. It's just that he also has to go pick up his kid.
And before he leaves to pick up his kid, we do get the comedic exchange of asking Philip to sign the paper. He said he can't, so he says, what about your boo? And looking at Nicole Kidman, and you get Bryan Cranston going, my boo? She's not my boo. We get some character development with Kevin Hart. We see him visit his estranged family, his ex-wife and his son, in the looks like the projects that they live in. He stole a copy of Huck Finn from Philip's residence and gave it to his child.
A lot more relatable than Omar Sy stealing the egg. So how many people know what a Faberge egg is? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Fabergé.
There
you go. We find he owes a ton of child support. He wants to be there to help his son and protect him, but he's kicked out of his ex-wife's apartment and says, fucking hit the bricks. We then get Walter White dreaming about fucking. He's laying in bed, sweating up a storm, reminiscing.
Okay, among other things. It's not a full-on sex dream. I mean, he's also dreaming of his accident, and he's just staring at the little dangly things.
It was sudden. As my point in stating that as graphically as I did was to establish how sudden the cut is to this.
Again, I appreciate the humanity given to the Cranston character here. We never, later on in the movie, when, like in the original, they get into talking about sex and what turns Cranston on and everything.
Oh, it's coming.
Oh, yeah. But it was, I believed it and I was satisfied. Whereas you might remember when we were talking about the French version, I felt that they left a lot of questions unanswered, that a question that I believed Omar Sy would have asked. Whereas like here, they go the extra mile.
Kevin Hart returns, Dell, that is, to Philip's residence and says he'll take the job. And despite, 2 minutes earlier showing the lives he's left in shambles, he's now living the high life and just kind of easily forgets about his previous life, at least for the moment. He comes back to it.
Yeah, and I buy it because here, with Omar Sy, the big thing was his mom kicked him out. And that's like, well, dude, I mean, you should move on. You're an adult. You shouldn't be living with your mom and all the other kids there. Here, America is very good at doing this, at setting goals and setting expectations, give you like a pretty good idea of what the ticking clock is for a movie. So here, it's very specific, right? He owes child support. He owes his I guess his wife or ex-wife and his kid are living in a shitty apartment. There's a very concrete goal of, well, this job is going to pay me. With that money, I can pay off child support. I can get them out of there. It's a very concrete path to the end of the movie, to a happy ending. The French version is just like, well, Omar Sy had nothing better to do. It was either working for Philippe or hanging out with his friends. Working for Philippe was not going to fix what happened with his mom. So I appreciate the nuts and bolts that are a lot more tighter in the American version.
In the French version, it is the assistant that the Del or Dries character is lusting after. In this one, it's Philip's physical therapist. Is her name Maggie?
Maggie?
Maggie? Maggie. Yep, the physical therapist that comes in.
But this more innocent. He's not the horn dog that Omar Sy was.
No, and karma does not come out to extract its revenge on Kevin Hart in this. But we get him seeing how everything is going to work with Philip, how to stretch him out, how to move his muscles, replace his catheter, similar to the explanation that Dries is given in the French film. Difference being here is that Del, is put on a 3-strike system by Nicole Kidman, and
I'm telling you, Americans pretty good at telling you like what the rules are.
Yeah, you don't want to leave anything up to your own judgment or interpretation. So you get Nicole Kidman explaining the rules of baseball, which is fucking awesome. That's probably one of the highlights of this movie. You know, like we said, if you have Kevin Hart on set, you got to have a wacky set piece of some sort. And wouldn't you know it, he's got a big old shower that he doesn't know how to use. And so we get 2 to 3 minutes of him trying to figure out how to use this fancy shower, and it goes awry. This water's coming at him from all these different angles, and we get a Kevin Hart. Ah!
He puts it in monsoon mode, right? That's what happens. It's good though, because we're maybe 30 minutes into the movie by now, and I needed a Kevin Hart that was more like what I'm used to. Right? I mean, this is the Kevin Hart, the serious Kevin Hart that we never see. This is, up till now, it's been Kevin Hart's Copland, Kevin Hart's Insomnia, Kevin Hart's Truman Show. This is just the Kevin Hart award-bait performance, and he's been doing great, but you kind of miss the lightheartedness, especially because, Cranston is grumpy, and Hart's been throwing one-liners here and there, but they're kind of angry one-liners. It's, if nothing else works in this movie for you, I think that the thing that you have to do is give Kevin Hart props for going out of his comfort zone and not making the mistake of wanting to emulate Omar Sy, right? Omar Sy was playing the jolly black dude, like the life of the party. And Kevin Hart wisely decides not to do that, but instead just play the angry black guy, who he usually doesn't really play, at least not with this intensity.
This is his wrestler.
Yes. Well, no. Wrestler is like 30 years from now. Right now, he's going up. Something bad's going to happen in his career. Well, he did get he lost the Oscars. And now he's going to fade into obscurity for a few years. Then when he comes back, he'll do his wrestler.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if that's an analogy, what this would be. Barflies or Diner. Yeah. He's just
Angel
get
Heart.
Horrific plastic surgery. I miss Mickey Rourke. The next scene, we see Philip buying a painting at an art gallery in New York City. This is almost
verbatim.
Yeah, the Michael Haneke thing you mentioned. I was gonna make the joke at the beginning that some of this is funny games.
Yep.
It's like exact interpretations of what the predecessor was.
They're frames, like in Fight Club. They're frames where he replaced Kevin Hart with Omar Sy.
Pretty much. He buys the painting. This scene goes almost exactly like the French counterpart.
It does, except there's more talking here.
Not counterpart, original.
Right. Because as they're driving back, maybe driving in, like Kevin Hart gets to like talk about life and ask him questions. There's a lot of talking in this movie. I think Americans generally are chattier than Europeans, I guess. Are you French specifically? And I was happy to see that difference. I mean, you'll see it even more after they get high.
On the drive back, he starts asking, how can he put a price on art type of thing. Comes to find out that the book, the Huck Finn copy he took, was part of Philip's collection that was left to him by his wife of originals that were all signed by the author. So Del realizes in this moment that he done screwed the pooch and needs to get this back. So he goes and visits his ex-wife and explains. He first gives her a check to begin paying back his child support, but then explains, hey, I need you to get that book back for me. And she gets very upset and says, you stole it. If you want it back, you got to get it back yourself. The side stress and the side tensions are kind of mounting around this.
Right. We never got anything even close to this with the egg, the Verge egg. that was, we never got a backstory on that egg. It was just jewelry. But here, there's an emotional connection to the book, and there's stakes because he gave it to his son. It's not like he can just go pick it up from the safe box or whatever.
Didn't Dries give it to his cousin?
No.
Did he just take it?
I think so, because, well, if he did, we never saw him get it back. We just, at the end of the movie, he kind of like pulls it out from his back pocket, like he'd had it there the entire film.
Takes it out of his shoe. More paragliding accident dreams. Not so much with his wife this time, but obviously some nightmares going on for Philip. He's having a hard time, and this is a scene where he kind of is going. Looks like he could potentially go out. It's what I imagine. The introductory scene with him and Yvonne was a similar situation of where he couldn't breathe, and that's why she took him to the emergency room. Dell comes in and resuscitates him using an oxygen mask, knowing that he asked him not to, but exclaiming, "I need this money, so you better wake up or I'm going to give you mouth to mouth."
It's very direct.
Mm-hmm.
Again, very American. Omar Sy was just more like, I'm just going to tickle you until you laugh and you feel like living again. Kevin Hart just shoving that oxygen mask on Bryan Cranston's face. The other thing is, I think this is the Travolta in Basic scene where Kevin Hart is just walking around the house shirtless, and he's fucking ripped. I've never seen him like that.
We get the shot of him asleep on the bed. I think it's that morning where he's got his shirt off and Nicole Kidman does like my word. Doesn't know whether to turn away or walk further in the room. Dell takes Philip out for a stroll. This is where they smoke some weed together. Their chemistry has been bumpy up until this point, but nothing brings buddies together, and especially in American film, like getting high and going and getting fast food.
100%. I mean, that encapsulates friendship in America in a way that The Untouchables, I believe, did not capture as far as the French equivalent, right? I mean, there's nothing or many French listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anything in The Untouchables that you can point at and go like, yes, this is friendship in France, But here, it's, of course, New York, middle of the night, they're high, they're ordered like 40 hot dogs, and they share, they talk. Well, I was telling you that they talk a lot in this movie. Mm-hmm. They do, but not in a bad way. This is not Judd Apatow riffing. I mean, they're telling each other their backstories. They're actually making themselves more interesting characters than the ones in the original.
Yeah, this is where he discusses what happened, the accident. Right, and he then explains that his wife, previous to the accident, had been diagnosed with cancer, and she basically had to take care of him in her waning years.
It's that Cranston's Oscar clip. I mean, easily. He gets a single tear.
Yes. It's here we learn that Dell's basically trying to think of a business idea to get money from Philip.
Right, because that's what Philip used to do. He wrote a book about lateral thinking and just how to monetize your ideas.
Helping startup companies and business expansion. And one of Dell's ideas is an app of where you can find local drug dealers. It would be called Ideal. We get the wacky catheter scene as the physical therapist is late. And so Kevin Hart needs to assist Bryan Cranston accordingly. Removes his catheter, replaces it.
Hell of a set piece.
Cranston gets an erection. Nicole Kidman walks in.
It's just...
I mean, you hit all the beats.
It's the kind of the sequence that you want in a remake, right? Because it ends and you're like, how was this not in the original?
This is where we learn, though, the ear fetish. Because his penis still works. But obviously there's no sensation or feeling there, so he asks him, kind of how you get off type of thing.
Yeah,
and he calls his ears an erogenous zone.
It's pretty cool because again, it's kind of like similar dynamic to what happens in the French version, but here it's very American, and Cranston is playing this kind of very American character where you may call Americans prude, but really when it comes to talking about your dick, we're all pretty non-prudish. And so, of course, Cranston is just having a grand old time saying the word penis and just talking about what gets him off, which either leads to him getting an erection or reinforces the erection. But this is what I was talking about when I
tell him, he's like, well, if you just stop playing with it, maybe it'd go down.
This scene doesn't leave any stones unturned when it comes to just what gets Bryan Cranston off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I was missing in the French version.
More replicas, or more replicating, I should say, of the French film with Kevin Hart getting two women of the night to come up and massage Philip's ears. They go to the opera. This is very, very similar to the scene in The Untouchables. The only difference being in the end, turns out Del really enjoyed himself and gives the opera a standing ovation.
It's pretty smart because it builds up to giving Kevin Hart something that's not going to compete with Omar Sy's dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great because I was honestly this is my second time watching this movie. The first time I watched it, I was dreading that birthday party sequence because I was like, it's for all my problems with Untouchables, what's untouchable is the dance sequence. And Kevin Hart, there's no way that he can live up to that. So I was glad that they gave him a different way of just making Philip happy, and gave him a connection with the opera and all that stuff.
Del also starts painting, much like Dries in the French version. We don't really get the reveal of the painting for a few scenes. Del learns of Philip's writing to a woman named Lily. This all very much in line with the French original.
Except for the part where here in America, they know to use Google. So once again, the time travel theory applies where it is not that hard to figure out anything about this woman or even to realize that obviously she Googled him.
Yeah.
There is no mystery, and that's good because this movie's set in the present.
And he has a certain level of celebrity too. So,
right.
Yeah.
He's an author.
Through this, we get Kevin Hart and Nicole Kidman. This again was when you have Kevin Hart on set, just let him go. We get like a 90s stand-up comedian scene of him talking about the type of men Nicole Kidman likes. And I bet he's got a beard. Where'd my cat go? Oh, it's in my beard. It's very Paula Poundstone.
But it's good because I think that it's obviously Kevin Hart is not trying to actually do stand-up. He's being really silly and really goofy because you're not gonna waste like really good material on Nicole Kidman's character because she's kind of a grump, as even probably worse than Philip here. She's really uptight and she doesn't find him amusing at all. So I think his strategy was acceptable. He was just making really dumb jokes because you can't go wrong with those.
It was Seinfeld shit. What's the deal with grape nuts? No grapes, no nuts.
What's the deal with Philip? Why can't he walk?
Jesus. In the next scene, we see Del, as well as we, the audience, become aware of the poetry that Philip has been writing for Lily. In this scene, very interesting direction by Bryan Cranston to act completely different than everyone else, and to act as though he's in a different movie than everyone else. He's actually acting like he's like in a play. He's acting with a very theater type presence, while the other two are like, "Hey, we're in a movie."
But Kevin Hart calls him on it, which is probably the greatest thing about it, because Cranston just goes too far. And I believe that what happened is because he gets into character to dictate these letters, and he never got out of character. And then Kevin Hart calls him when he says something like,
"Nor her eye."
Yeah, he's like, "Nor her eye," or Shakespeare play.
Very similar to the French original, also in that he takes the phone. He's like, she obviously sent you her number for a reason. Calls her, just puts the phone up to Philip. It's a voicemail. He leaves it, says, "Hey, call me back. We can talk."
Not to jump too far ahead, but this is probably one of the biggest differences with the French version and one of the biggest improvements, which is that this action, when Omar Sy did it, I remember saying probably in the episode, he should have gotten fired for this. This is crossing the line. The fact that he takes the phone and then forces his employer to make a phone call that he was not emotionally ready to, that's horrible. Mm-hmm. And he kind of lucks out that it pans out. But here, in this movie, we get to see actual consequences for doing that kind of stuff. I mean, later on, because of what happens, because of this phone call, it basically costs him a job. And he ends up unemployed because of doing bullshit like this, which is great.
In the next scene, his painting, he reveals to Philip and his staff. It's an interesting painting. Most of them kind of just laugh it off, but Philip says, there's potential here. There's something interesting here.
Do you remember the name?
Bravery?
What is bravery?
What is bravery? Dell takes Philip for a ride, shows him around his neighborhood, introduces him to his son. They have a crack up of a day. When he goes to drop his son off, though, things quickly break down as he says, "Hey, that book I gave you, I need it back." His son sees right through it, knows what's going on, and goes and hands the book back to Philip and said, "I didn't know this was yours when he gave it to me." And then for all of the hubbub that was made about how important these books were, Philip is pretty cool with it.
How awesome was that subversion of expectations? Because I thought that this was gonna be where like in most movies of this kind, contrived argument between the two of them was gonna take place, and then there was gonna be tension. When really, what you want to do is just move on and let's get to the date, right? But no, the scene works to. If there's conflict with anybody, as with the kid, right? It kind of fucks up his relationship with his son, who had a pretty good day up till then. But when it comes to Philip, you get a glimpse of a different person, and maybe the Philip from the beginning of the movie would have fired him for this, but this one is just like, well, books are meant to be read, and it's almost like he realizes that it's a little silly to hang on to these really old books just for display.
It is Philip's birthday, and they get back to his loft, and there's a surprise party waiting for him. Tensions are already a bit hot between he and Dell, but this kind of just pushes Philip over the edge with his anger. They go into a back room where kind of all of his gifts are, and I think it's his study, his office, and he just cuts a promo on Nicole Kidman, saying I specifically request none of this, because some of the people there, it's already been established he doesn't care for, like the guy who lives below him.
Yeah, this movie has a version of the neighbor. I guess he was also neighbor, right? Or a friend or something.
Yeah.
Which, when we're watching the French version, I said he's probably racist, and in the American version, he's 100% racist. There's no doubt.
He hits him with the "You're putting us in danger" by having him in the building. So he tells Nicole Kidman, tell everyone to leave. She goes out, and then he asks Dell, "Were you aware of this? Is this your shit? Did you set this up?" And Kevin Hart hits him with the, "I'm sorry that you're rich and you have to hang out with all your friends that are giving you a bunch of nice things."
This was the moment where Katrina Lopez or whoever, that quote that I read, where she was like, "How dare he? He's in a wheelchair. You don't talk to him like this." It's pretty cool. The movie goes full on America here, where it's just Kevin Hart is the voice against white privilege, and Bryan Cranston just calls him out on his bullshit as well, and goes like, "Well, I'm sorry that one day of taking your kid out to have ice cream doesn't make up for all the neglect."
Yeah, that line was deep. And so Kevin Hart throws a bottle down, and I know this is helping give Philip a release of some sort. At this point, he just starts telling Dell the things he wants broken and thrown on the ground. And I think at one point Bryan Cranston fully releases during this scene.
I was going to say, the sexual tension is palpable.
Someone must have been rubbing his ears, because, we just get these close-ups of...
I'm not making this up, Alex. There is a shot during this sequence that starts on Bryan Cranston's crotch.
Oh, really?
I thought I was watching it on my phone, and I actually rewinded. I was like, holy shit, he went there.
Hal, I think that's his name on Malcolm in the Middle. I was going to say we see Hal's O-face. He just, oh!
He's screaming too.
He sounds like Solid Snake dying at one point. And actually a really comedically well-timed Nicole Kidman comes back in and is just like, what the fuck? And Bryan Cranston just said, Dell made a mess. We already touched on it, but the white neighbor is worried about someone with a rap sheet being in there, and he thinks he's putting them all in danger. Cranston lets him know that he's well aware of his past. This literally cuts right into him looking up at the new painting, the white snob, and saying, "Oh, this is interesting. Do you think it'll appreciate?" Spoiler alert, he ends up buying the painting for $50,000.
If you've seen the original, you knew that that's what was going to happen. But this guy, I guess the process by which this guy ends up buying the painting, even though it's just like maybe a couple more beats in the story, it does so much more to sell you that idea. Mm-hmm. Because you actually see the process, the conversation he has with Cranston, where Cranston really hooks him and then slowly reels him in, as opposed to, I think the French version, you just kind of, in the background, they make the deal.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like a lot more satisfying.
They're off on the side at his birthday party. And yeah.
This is also best joke of the movie is during this birthday party sequence, which is when I think right after that, Cranston is looking for Kevin Hart and he finds him. He's talking to this really old lady, and the old lady turns to him and is like, "Yeah, I'm talking to him. We're talking about what it's like to be black."
Yes, and Kevin Hart's face at this is very, very good. And at this point, he asks him how his ideal app's coming along. So they go and, once again, classic American trope. They come out of a room with smoke billowing behind them, both with their eyes barely open, laughing at the wind. And then they come out and it becomes a communal dance, a group dance, because, as you mentioned, there ain't no way anyone in this movie's topping Omar Sy's dance sequence to Boogie Wonderland.
Right. Instead, even before he breaks out who is it? Bruno Mars. It's Bruno Mars. But even before that, the way they bridge it is the opera people that have been playing for the party, they're packing up, but then super high Kevin Hart, it's like, no, don't go, stay. I want to direct you.
He starts conducting.
He starts conducting, walks them through 5 or 6 musical numbers, and then I guess he starts playing his music. But that gives you I think it's better than in the original when Omar Sy is just basically, well, now I want to dance, I want to throw my party. Whereas here, it starts with him acknowledging what Philip likes and making it his own, and then introducing his music and making everybody else dance. It's not, oh, well, now it's the Kevin Hart show, and I'm just going to take over the party.
So the dancing continues. Nicole Kidman gets on the floor, cuts a rug. They even get Philip himself out there just to kind of soak up the local atmosphere on the dance floor. During all this, Lily calls back and arranges a date with Philip. So his birthday has gone pretty damn well. We cut to Dell taking him to the date with Lily. This is where Philip gives him the check for $50K for his painting. Kind of just bluntly tells him, art's not your thing, but this is for you to invest in a business. This is, the capital that you'll need for it.
Again, much better end to that subplot than in the original, where, basically, Omar Sy never really acknowledged that he's not going to make a living as a painter, right? In the original, when he gives him the check, Omar Sy's like, oh, well, I guess this is my thing now. Here, Cranston stops it and lets everybody, Kevin Hart, the audience, know that, no, this is the end of this joke. So did you know that Juliana Margulies played Lily?
Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah, that's where I was going. I lost track of my notes here. Juliana Margulies, Nina from her run on Scrubs. I know ER was her big thing,
yeah,
right?
I was going to say Nurse Hathaway, Nurse something. She's the good wife. Really?
I'll always know her as being Nina from Scrubs, because she had like a 3 or 4 episode arc with that, and she was very good in it. So when she
hook up with Zach Braff?
Yeah, that's the whole joke. She's like super domineering over him, and he can't do anything to resist her. If you didn't know, Scrubs was at one point in time a good television show.
And people didn't hate Zach Braff.
What a time to be alive. But no, I was not aware it was her in this scene. And this is like easily the most tense turn away, watch through your fingers scene in it, because there's nothing like inherently like in your face. I was kind of giving this movie some shit for lack of subtlety earlier. This is definitely a subtle scene, but there's just this undercurrent of like boiling tensions.
It is. I like that this movie is not afraid of really giving us that tension, because that was something else that we commented when we were talking about the original, that it was a pretty easygoing movie with almost no conflict. Whenever there was a conflict, it was resolved like within 5 seconds. Here, they had a pretty intense argument at during the birthday party. In the ongoing, in the movie is not like in the original where Omar Sy's family is brought up every now and then. Here, Kevin Hart's family is a recurring issue that always keeps you worried about what's happening with them. And then this date, the French version completely pussies out of showing us that. Mm-hmm. The French version just has Philip, bail on her.
Yeah.
Americans are not afraid of this. We live for comedies about awkward dating. You could have replaced Bryan Cranston with Ben Stiller for this sequence. It would have been perfect.
But yeah, she said she looked up on him. She knew that he was a quadriplegic beforehand. And you get the sense that Lily, Juliana Margulies, has her own set of issues, because she brings up her therapist and how they've
talked about this.
Yeah. and how it's not what she expected, and it's too much for her because she keeps noticing things like food that gets on him, or his limp hand hanging off the side of his wheelchair.
There's a deleted scene. There's a deleted scene in the Criterion that's just a session, where she's like, "Do you think that you are attracted to men who are just out of reach? Do you tend to get into relationships with brains but not with bodies?"
She even hits him with the "maybe we can just be friends," and that's where Philip Cranston just loses it and says, "Fuck this, I'm getting out of here." You had mentioned earlier what you believed his Oscar scene was, and relaying the tale of his accident, his wife to him. To me, this is the Oscar scene, because I've never heard a line written more for an award than when he's trying to leave, and the maitre d' or whomever spills the tea on him, and he states, "Did we burn you? Are you okay? I can't feel anything. I don't feel anything."
God, that's, to quote you, my friend, chef's kiss. After that, Cranston was like, "All right, I'm done. Kevin Hart, you can finish the movie, because I peaked."
Go back to the loft. He and Dell, they have a fight. Dell explains, "I've been rejected by women too, and I was just trying to help you," that type of thing. And I forget exactly how he phrases it, but basically Cranston's able to phrase it that "you stole this from me. I was supposed to do it my way, but you stole my moment from me because you're a thief." And he just
No. Kevin Hart says, "Oh, because I'm a thief? I stole it because I'm a thief?" It's just classic. It was like the real big argument in a couple. Like, the real couple's argument is happening here. We've all been there, when you're just angry and you say the wrong thing, and then the person you're arguing with takes that and makes it even worse, even though you didn't mean it. So, what do you mean, you people?
So he gets fired from his job with Philip. Dell, at this point, we get a bit of a montage in which we see that he uses that check he was given to buy, looks like a townhome in a nicer part of town, and gives the keys to his ex-wife and child, trying to kind of make good on it. We see that he gets a job helping do repair and construction of wheelchairs.
Does he get a job, or is that his company?
I didn't even think of that.
I thought it was, I don't know, maybe because they kept talking about him just creating a business. I just thought that was his thing.
Yeah.
He also seemed to be in charge. He was giving directions to the guys that were actually building the chairs. I don't know. I thought that was the movie paying off the long-running gag of what is he gonna do for a living?
That would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely does better with the money than Omar Sy.
Yeah, that would make sense of his business, because he's like on the floor. He's clearly in charge,
right,
telling people what to do. Yeah, good sense of deduction. Maggie, the physical therapist, comes to Dell, explains things are bad. He won't listen to anybody. He won't eat. His new life auxiliaries are just very bad. We need you to come kind of save the day. So Dell comes in, sees Philip there with his big beard, and this is where we go to the beginning of the movie. The end is the beginning, is the end. Smashing Pumpkins.
This is where Billy Corgan takes him parasailing.
Yes. Inside Batman's helmet, which is somehow Gotham. They drive out to the country, somewhere on the outskirts of New York. This all, of course, to go paragliding. This was set up by... it's funny because it seems like it was set up by Dell, but then
he's surprised when they have a paraglider for him.
Yeah. Much like the French version, it looked like, as best I could tell, that looked pretty practical, as though they were actually doing it.
That's really Kevin Hart pissing his pants up there.
Well, that was, his reaction seemed genuine, just like Omar Sy's in the French version. It's like, this is fucking scary, because that definitely looks like something that would be terrifying.
It's such a simple thing, but the placement of this sequence in this version, the American version, as basically a celebration of them being friends again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the French version, this happens before they split. And also, the French version has kind of like a weak sauce end to his employment. You might remember, it's just like, "Hey, I think it's time for you to go take care of your nephew," or whatever. I remember I never bought it. It was like, here, they got into a fight, and then they made up, and then went to celebrate by doing something that makes Philip feel alive again.
We needed that fucking conflict. This is America, damn it. We gotta put some sriracha on it.
We live in conflict. We need to. If there's no conflict in the movie, then it just feels fake.
again, you want to talk about almost exact remakes? We get a pretty damn close shot-for-shot reimagining of the beard shaving scene, complete with Bryan Cranston in a Hitler mustache, but he at least does the Chaplin face, like the from side to side. So
he's more, and this is through the entire movie, Cranston participates more. I mean, I've said it before, but there's more. Whereas in the original, Philippe just kind of sits there and lets Omar Sy do whatever he wants. Cranston is actually suggesting things and throwing comments. At some point, he's like, "Oh, I look sexy." There's a lot more give and take.
He puts the handlebar mustache on him. He says, "Ah, I look badass."
I am the one who knocks.
And then we're coming down. The movie's reached its end. It's reached its crescendo. As I guess this is just a summer home or something that Philip has, and he's just looking out over the water. And similar to the end of the French one, Dell explains, "I gotta go, but there's someone here to see you."
So you're like rubbing your hands, waiting for Juliana Margulies to come back in, saying, "I'm sorry, I talked to my therapist, we figured it out."
And I think you see a hand, and then you see Cranston's reaction first. And he's like, "I've missed you," and lo and behold, it is Miss Australia herself, Nicole Kidman.
Oh, because
Yvonne back to save the day.
Right, because she had left while Kevin Hart was away. Bryan Cranston
became too much for her.
Yeah, he became a complete asshole. So she had enough.
And then we do this. I don't know why it stuck with me more than any other shot of the movie. The shot of Kevin Hart walking away, just like Omar Sy, looking back over his shoulder up into the window, and then smiling, and then fade to black. They are friends to this day. Nicole Kidman is there to, I guess, spend the rest of her life with Bryan Cranston. God bless them both.
It is probably, in a movie that's not very subtle, the greatest subtle achievement is how when you get to this point and you look back, you're like, yeah, I can see it. I remember. It's like when TV shows will do this, where they'll remind you of how you got to a point in that relationship by showing you clips from the entire season.
Yeah.
And you see all the little smiles and nods that these two characters had. And so here in your mind, you see all the little smiles between Nicole Kidman and Bryan Cranston, which count for a lot because Nicole Kidman is generally pretty serious in this movie. So anytime you see her smile, or you see her loosening up, like when she's dancing and she kind of dances with Cranston, he's moving his wheelchair, or they were talking about the letters that he's writing. There's a pretty funny moment when Kevin Hart is telling him, "You need to be more direct with how you talk," and then she starts helping him write, contribute stuff. I don't know. It's all, I buy it that she cared for him, and she's already been doing what Juliana Margulies couldn't do, which is take care of him, and obviously she likes him. I guess the big reveal at the end is that we didn't know how much she liked him. And of course, what, Cranston's gonna say no?
You're Nicole Kidman. I'm Bryan Cranston. This shouldn't work, but it does.
I believe that we can make this work.
And that's that. It takes us home. Ends just on as happy note as the French original, but took us a different road to get there with a bit more rewarding points along the way.
I was a little bummed that just like the French original version ended with just a little clip of the real people. Kind of bummed me that this movie didn't end with a clip of Omar Sy and the French guy.
Francois Cluzet.
Yeah, just fishing.
Just watching it. That would be great.
It says Dell started a successful career in the Marvel Universe.
And Dell would go on to host the Oscars.
Those January releases, they just never know what's
so
coming.
Optimistic.
All right, are you ready for real talk?
Most definitely.
Maggie says she's running late.
Okay. It can wait.
Well, it says it can't. It says I gotta change a crazy straw. Why don't they have a self-changing catheter? Okay, business idea. What if I told you that I can create a self-changing catheter?
I would ask where your biomedical engineering degree was from. Look, Del, just find something you love doing and then find a way to scale it. I mean, what are you really good at?
Well, it's clearly not this. You know, can we just not talk? Especially when I feel like I'm in the worst porno ever.
It's no big deal.
I mean, it's no big deal. You ever touched another man's,
What, you can't even say the word?
I can say the word.
Well, say it.
No,
Just say it.
I don't want to.
Penis.
Stop it.
Okay, fine. Jeez.
Done. Young Merlin's got the sword.
So that would make my penis the stone, then?
Can you stop saying that word?
Just using your analogy.
Stop saying the word. I'm asking you.
Okay.
It's not helping me.
Okay.
All right, so I'll take this out. And then I gotta pinch the head, put it in. All right? Just letting you know what's going on. All right. Let's do it. This don't look like it's gonna fit, man.
That's what she said.
And we are recording for Real Talk for The Upside.
All right. What a movie.
What a movie. Do you think? Because we watched The Untouchables 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that that 2 week stretch helped this movie or hurt it?
Helped. Well, I probably would have disliked it even more if we watched it right afterwards.
The comparison would have been just stronger.
I'm trying my absolute best to just critique it on its own for its own merit
Uh-huh.
and try to not neglect but compartmentalize how much I like the French one.
Mhm.
Basically trying to act like I've never seen it. I mean, it's really hard to do, but
I had that problem with Nightmare on Elm Street because we did it back to back. Opposite feelings.
The autumn of remakes was a terrible idea. The Upside, once again, directed by Neil Berger, who Greg Turkington has a fictional alter ego that's Neil Hamburger. So when I first read that, I was like, wait, what? Who directed, as I mentioned, The Illusionist, Limitless, Divergent. Not necessarily a whole... He doesn't have a filmography of bang. Scorsese, we're not dealing with here.
How does it feel about the Marvel Universe? Has anybody asked?
Probably like, fuck yeah. And it was released again on January 11th, 2019, about a year after it was supposed to be released. Budget of a bit under 40 million, box office return of a little bit over 120 million. So definitely made a good chunk of change. Did not come close to the near $500 million that the French original had made, the inspiration for it.
Do you think it would have if it had been released when it was first made?
I don't know. It's. I mean, The Untouchables was so much based on hearsay. Or not hearsay is not the proper term I'm looking for, but word of mouth. That's the expression I'm looking for.
Right.
I'm just not sure I could see this getting the same kind of traction.
I wonder if there has to be a section of moviegoers that will hear about, kind of like what you were joking about at the beginning of the first segment, that they hear about an acclaimed European movie and they're like, I'm not going to read the subtitles. I'm just going to wait for the American remake, right? But if you wait too long to make that remake, then they just forget about it.
The
and
window
they don't,
closes.
Right. So maybe, I don't know how much of that makes the box office of a remake of a European movie. But I would imagine most of those people did not show up to opening weekend of the Upside. If they were aware of The Untouchables, they probably had forgotten about it or had better things to do on that weekend in January.
Yeah, and
what I'm saying is we're talking about Kevin Hart fans and Bryan Cranston fans showing up for this.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is the unique casting in it is... Because that's something to take into context with The Untouchables. No one fucking knew who Omar Sy, outside of France, no one knew who Omar Sy or Francois were. It was all just like, hey, you got to go see this movie. And with this, when you release movies in America, especially with A-listers like Kevin Hart, Nicole Kidman, and Bryan Cranston, then it entails people have these, I don't like him, I don't like their movies, or that type of thing. And so you deal with it's a different beast altogether.
Right. But also, I mean, I guess January release just generally means
Oh, that's
that...
kiss of death.
Right.
Unless you're Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Right. I don't think they released it in January thinking, oh, there's no competition, we might beat the January movie. It was more like, when the fuck can we dump this where it will hurt us the least? But let's say if it had been a Christmas release, do you think it would have made more money? Because it's a crowd pleaser.
Oh God, yeah. I'll say this about it: it doesn't shy away from what it is.
It aggressively pursues
attacks you with
that pleasing of the crowd.
It waits in the bushes, jumps out, and mauls you with its desire to please you as an audience.
It's like Bryan Cranston's erection in this movie. It's just, it'll be there.
I guess interesting trivia. There wasn't too much. Chris Tucker, Jamie Foxx, Chris Rock, and Idris Elba were considered to play the role of Dell.
Idris Elba.
Yeah.
Completely different vibe.
Go. Get the fuck up. Colin Firth was attached to the lead role at one point. Jessica Chastain and Michelle Williams were considered for the lead female role. Man, Jessica Chastain.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I was gonna say I wouldn't have wanted to see her in this, but she was in an X-Men movie and fucking It this year, so that's where we're at right now.
I mean, hat trick.
Yeah,
you open with the upside.
Yeah, I mean, before we get too far into it, with that being said, it was at 41%. It was a rotten movie, but that being said, it means that close to every other person that saw it enjoyed it. So what were the peeps saying?
All right, so I got 4 quotes from Rotten Tomatoes website. Fresh quotes this time. Carla Renata from the Kirby Film Critic. At the end of the day, the upside will leave you feeling great about life. If you have a bucket list, you better get started on it like yesterday.
All right.
Bucket list. Watch a movie with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart on screen at the same time. Check.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that they were both in the movie The Bucket List, and I was like, wait, what?
That's a remake I would love to see. Just give it another 30 or 40 years. Ruth Fang.
5.
Ruth Fang from The New Paper, Singapore, says, Hart actually shows some heart here.
Yeah.
Amanda Sink from The Hollywood Outsider. The upside is a beautiful tale about the fragility of humanity and the healing powers of friendship. It's not that.
No.
I mean, that's accurate. And finally, Tara McNamara from Common Sense Media. Charming Hart Cranston disability dramedy glorifies pot use.
All right, that's a lot. There's a lot in there. Honestly, after talking about it in the first half, I am not now disliking it as much as I did when it was over. It's not good.
I'm glad to hear that, because honestly, I was afraid that we were gearing up for another Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 discussion where I was gonna have to.
Well, unless you say something fucking asinine like it's better than The Untouchables.
It's not better than The Untouchables.
Okay,
come on, Alex. It's not even better than The Untouchables by Brian De Palma. But I think it's better than bad. I actually
better than I thought it was gonna be.
I'll even say, Alex, it's good. If it didn't have the albatross hanging around its neck of being a remake of an amazing French movie, we would be like, wow, this is actually pretty decent.
So in the things I was trying to find that weren't me comparing it to The Untouchables, Cranston's acting is incredibly inconsistent through this. Like,
you think so?
Yeah, it seems like he is really on in some scenes, and then other scenes he could be anywhere else in the world. Kevin Hart I was most impressed with, because despite them making sure, because it's Kevin Hart, I've saying this in the first portion, I mean this, they're going to use him to do something wacky and funny, but they showed pretty good restraint for the most part. We get a few comedic set pieces with him, but there wasn't like one part of him like
yeah, that was really to me the clear standout, much like in The Untouchables, Omar Sy is just the big revelation. It's a great movie, but probably the greatest thing about it is that Omar Sy just took the world by storm, or at least the world of the people that watched it.
Yeah.
And here, to me, it was something similar. When I went to watch it, I didn't have high expectations, and I certainly did not expect Kevin Hart to really not just win me over, but have me cheering for him in the way that I did after, I was done with the movie or throughout the movie, because I think he really, it's not like I'm extremely familiar with the filmography. I'm extremely familiar with the trailers for his filmography. And, the Kevin Hart persona is definitely not what you get here. Here, he's taking it
Reserved,
seriously.
yeah.
I'm not saying that he doesn't take his comedic roles seriously, but I'm just saying that the character here is not a clown. He feels like a flesh and blood person, and he has issues, and I buy those issues when he's sad, when he's angry. Like I get it. I completely buy it. And he's also funny without resorting to just the shtick.
Yeah.
I think that there's some moment, that reaction, I was not kidding, Contrarians Corner, we were talking about what it means to be black. His reaction to that line was so funny.
It was really funny. And it's funny you kind of brought up that sequence, because that was going to I was going to springboard from that to my next point in the movie of one thing I can compliment on it. Aside from that part, what it is to be black in America, and then the clear racist neighbor or whatever, it does as good of a job as The Untouchables did about not trying, at least in my opinion. And again, I'm a white dude, but it doesn't try to beat you over the head with the difference with them racially. It's just like,
I think that it does it more than you think, but it doesn't. And I actually think it goes overboard a little bit, but not in a way that made me angry. My main, not fear, but my main guess, I guess, when I got the hint that you were not liking, I was like, oh man, Alex is gonna complain about how they just keep bringing up race, but it's mostly jokes. And what happened this time, which didn't happen the first time I watched it, but on this rewatch, I got that feeling that, when people complain about, let's say, Green Book, just like a movie.
this is better than Green Book.
Yes, I agree. But just the idea, there's like some stereotypes that are just prevalent on this type of story. And one of them is just the white dude that helps the black dude be more cultured. Mm-hmm. And so the added subplot of suddenly, now he enjoys opera. I was like, I could see how people would be like, come on, that's a little condescending.
Yeah.
But I buy it because, I don't know, I like the characters, and I'm not seeing them, for the most part in the movie, I'm not seeing them as like, black and white, and this is the dynamic. To me, it's just two different walks of life, and, like we did with the original.
The movie's not subtle about anything, so maybe I was just tricked into thinking that it's not what it is. Where I stand by The Untouchables specifically, I stand by that I don't really feel there's any racial divide in that movie. Not intentionally, at least, because the whole reason...
Well, especially after watching this one.
Yeah. There's not like... Yeah, there's no character in The Untouchables that's like, I don't want to live with a black person.
Even
the whole thing in The Untouchables is like... The directors just liked Omar Sy,
right?
So like, he's gonna be our guy.
Well, I think that maybe
now I'm getting pissed because like now it's like that automatically forces the perspective that they cast the black and white just based on the fact that it was black and white in the first one.
Oh, I think so. I think that they cast Kevin. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they cast Kevin Hart because it would have been kind of an uproar if they'd cast somebody who wasn't black. Especially if they casted a white dude, it's like, why are you?
Oh God, yeah. Why are you making this?
But I mean, I think I said it on the last episode, on the Untouchables episode, where I made the reference probably about how, well, if it was set in America, you would have to address it, especially America in the year 2019 or 2018 or whatever. And so I think they addressed it enough. There is a moment, it's almost, I was gonna say, blink and you miss it, when Kevin Hart and Nicole Kidman are having like one of their earlier interactions, and she says something, and he goes like, oh, well, he basically says, are you saying this about me because I'm racist? And she just says, no, I'm saying this about you because you're not competent. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's just a brief moment where race is brought up and then it's put away. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it would be disingenuous to expect a conversation of this sort to take place in America today and not somehow bring up race.
Yeah.
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 So I actually appreciated that.
I think that's what you said in the Untouchables Real Talk too, because obviously we don't live in France, so we don't know if the
Right.
tensions are quite as high over there. But the way that movie was presented, it's just like, here's this movie with people,
Exactly.
and here it's now I'm starting to come around to kind of what you're saying. Now here's this movie. Hey, there's this black dude that works for this white guy type thing.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely doesn't let either of them let race define them or define their relationship. But there are a few bumps that I think are, if nothing else, intensified because one is black and one is white.
Yeah.
And they're surrounded by white people. But I actually appreciated that. I think it's an asset more often than it is a hindrance in the movie.
One thing in that I found funny, not to do with anything with race, but talking about the intense lack of subtlety. One, it really did annoy me in the opening scene because he's having a seizure, and he looks at him and like basically tells him to do it, and Bryan Cranston's like, see, I saw Hugh Grant playing the role in that moment because I could just see him rolling his eyes and oh dear, because that was the first time I saw the Untouchables, because he does. There's not that like moment where he like winks at Philippe to start faking a seizure. So when it cut to him like foaming at the mouth, it's like, holy shit, what's actually going on here?
Right.
So that kind of kills the opening. But what I was going to say, the insistence on making sure that you don't respect your audience's intelligence at all, the weed smoking each time, because in the Untouchables, it's just there's not much there. They just pass a joint back and forth, and like their conversation
That's
expands.
it, yeah.
Here, you got to have the smoke billowing behind them. They got to go get some fast food and stuff like that.
But that said, I really like the scene at the fast food, like the hot dog scene. There's that really awesome moment where Kevin Hart is ordering, and then the guy behind the counter goes like, "And what about him?" And Kevin Hart's like, "Don't be like that, man.
Yeah,
look at him in the eye. Talk to him directly." It's just like a brief moment, but it's really good, And it's not in the original.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the original is wrong for not having that moment, but it's just I like that they decided to make this character kind of just like a more aggressive in a way that Omar Sy wasn't aggressive. Omar Sy was pretty gentle and like,
okay, so counterpoint off that, they make Kevin Hart's character more socially aggressive, because one of the things we talked about and I love about the Dries character is how physically imposing he is,
Right.
and how he like bullies people in
yes.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't try to have Kevin Hart do that, because I'm not sure how believable that would have been.
It would have been as believable as him trying to outdance Omar Sy at the birthday party. I mean, that wasn't going to happen.
And that was another good call too, that they're just like, let's just do something different, because there's no way we're going to have something like that.
It's good because it makes it, especially on rewatch, I realized that just becomes about Nicole Kidman. Like the big moment in that sequence is that he gets Nicole Kidman to dance, which leads to Bryan Cranston going like, "Oh, I didn't know you could dance." And then they have that moment, which really means more after you've seen the movie and you realize that they're going to end up together, which I don't buy. And I think that on rewatch, it bothered me more now than the first time I watched it. I don't think, as much as they try, I don't think that they build up that enough.
And I thought the movie was going to end just with them together, Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston. And then when like they set it up like, oh, there's someone here to see you, I knew where it was going. I was like, fuck you.
It's not Nicole Kidman's fault. I think she does what she can with the screen time
not.
she has and all the...
None of this movie, the failings of this movie is no one in its fault necessarily. It's just...
Except maybe whoever wrote that line, I can't feel anything. I don't feel anything.
Like, that was one of those, like, I put my hands on my cheeks and I was like, oh, no.
Because they were doing so well up till then.
Because he does the, I can't feel anything, dramatic pause. And then, again, like, then the camera pans up to his stoic face. He's basically looking at you, the viewer. I don't feel anything.
But before that, the sequence before that, the whole thing with Julianne Margulies, like you said in Contrarians Corner, it's actually really good.
Yeah. That's probably the most effective scene in the entire movie for me. She's really good. He's great. They even put like a really, I'm shitting on this movie for its lack of subtlety, but there's just like kind of a hint of like brooding music in the background while it's all going on. It's, to me, easily the best constructed scene in the movie, and it's one of the only times where you can really feel both sides of the equation. You can like feel where kind of they're both coming from, and I obviously can't relate to a quadriplegic. At the same time, I can kind of feel his sense of alienation and isolation, and yeah, it's it's really good. I wasn't expecting there to be a scene that good in this movie.
Right. Well, she's really good. Julia Margulies comes in and, just in that one
Still
scene.
as gorgeous as ever.
Like it's straight out of the set from ER. The way that her demeanor slowly changes and she stops being enthusiastic about the date and she just looks bummed or kind of lost in thought. That was really good. It's really heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
How did you feel, now that we're in real talk, how do you feel about the flashbacks, the POV flashbacks to him, I guess, having sex? I hadn't even thought about it.
That was just very abrupt. I was like, whoa, what?
I mean, I don't think it registered that some of it was him having sex, but I just saw it as, he's just remembering his wife and remembering the accident, and just the fact that we got to see his wife, I mean, that kind of, it didn't bother me.
No, it's like a video game. Sometimes when video games shift POV too much, it annoys me, and that was kind of, it didn't do it enough to annoy me. It was just like, okay, sometimes we see things through Bryan Cranston's memory. All right.
Sometimes Tarantino puts Kurt Russell to do a voiceover there.
Yeah, it didn't do enough to bother me. All the things in this that I could bitch about being not subtle or too obvious or contrived, all of that is just the way American filmmakers, for the most part, think they have to make movies now. So it would be me just more bitching about the whole general overtone. There's nothing in this movie that was inherently offensive to me, really, that I can think of right now off the top of my head.
Like you said, it's better than Green Book.
Yeah. It just suffers from a lot of the trappings of what modern movies meant for mainstream audiences are supposed to be, because mainstream audiences typically are really lazy and just want everything fucking handed to them right there.
But now, how many people do you think are inspired to watch the French original because
I would
they
hope
like
a lot.
this, right? I mean, I would think. I had a couple of friends that liked this movie, and I told them, I was like, I played them a couple of clips from the French version. I played them Omar Sy at the party dancing, and I played them the opening, and I was like, "Isn't that cool?"
Yeah,
like, it's the same thing, but it's different.
So, going from that, we can compliment Kevin Hart, and then also some things Bryan Cranston does. I don't think they have very good chemistry at all.
Really, I bought it.
I mean, I bought it, but like, again, this is where the as you referred to it, the albatross of the Untouchables being there, where Dries and Philippe, like, I would watch any movie those two guys were in again together. Just like their chemistry is so good together. That is the one thing I could not compare it to.
I want to say I like Cranston's character. Maybe not necessarily the performance. I think the performance is fine. I didn't have I didn't notice what you were saying, that he kind of like goes in and out of character, or he changes gears a lot. But I kind of like
inflection and shit he changes is really inconsistent.
Kind of like what I said in Contrarians Corner. I really like that they made him a little more feisty than the French version. I mean, and that's fine. Philippe works with Dries because they have very specific personalities that are very different from the personalities they have here.
It's also the way specifically the character was written for it. Because Philippe is supposed to just kind of, that's the whole point of Dries, is tells him to fucking stand up for yourself. Like, he's too reserved, whereas here,
right? If Cranston,
they're oil and water,
right? If Cranston didn't fight back, then just
it
Kevin
would be
Hart,
the Kevin Hart show.
Exactly, he would just steamroll him.
Yeah.
But here, it's not even just that he fights back. I'd forgotten about the NDR, and that's kind of a big deal because it really tells you where he is in life as far as, I think that he makes a stronger impression than Philippe in the original.
Yeah.
With Philippe, I think that, I mean, you're enjoying the movie, so you don't mind, but there's a lot of times where you're like wondering what the hell's going on in his head beyond just kind of being bummed and missing his wife and all that stuff, right? And but here, you have a better grasp of what's going on with Cranston, I think, from the very beginning. There's not so much of a mystery, but you're right, he doesn't have that arc where he needs to learn to stand, he doesn't have a daughter that he needs to set straight. And that does happen in the French one.
It's fine for what it is. I mean, I'd give it a C, perhaps. Is PG-13? I guess they didn't swear or anything really in it.
touch his freaking ears.
Yeah, it's fine. It is not in the same. It's not cut from the same cloth as the original, in my opinion. Which also, I give them props of not necessarily lifting, but I guess they would probably say paying homage. Many of the sequences, especially the God, I can just see it now. The middle-aged to elderly crowd watching the American version during the shaving scene and just knee slapping, and because that is a great sequence and it's lifted almost spot for spot from the original. So to your point, I hope this motivated more people to go see The Untouchables because it's a better movie. That's not necessarily to say this is bad. It's just kind of, for me, it is what it is.
I was looking up when I watched it earlier this year. I gave it 3 stars. I think I'm gonna bump it to 3.5.
Jeez.
Even though the ending worked even less for me this time, I really liked even with 2 weeks in between watching the original, this one, the contrast, the good contrast was I appreciated more. All the racial stuff, like the good things that make it feel a little more American.
Mm-hmm.
They worked a lot better. Or I was able to notice them better, acknowledge them better. And they make up for the failings, so to speak. They make up for the clunky lines, like "I don't feel anything," and and just the weird Nicole Kidman, happy ending at the end.
Yeah, it's definitely Americanized. I mean, a C. I would give it a C. Kelly, your wife, is a big fan of The Untouchables. Does she like this?
Oh, she wouldn't watch it.
Oh, okay. Good job, Kelly.
And I even tried because, I rented it and I watched the first 30 minutes or so. I watched yesterday and then I had to go do something and then I finished it at night. But, when I watched the first 30 minutes, I was like, she might like it.
I can almost guarantee I'll never watch this again because I watched it for this podcast. I've seen it. I know it's not terrible. It's fine. But now, going forward, I'll always have the option to just watch The Untouchables if I want to watch this.
Right.
So,
unless there's a set of circumstances where you need to tell somebody that Kevin Hart is not that bad.
That's true. Next time I see Reed, he's not too bad.
And you know what? I honestly, my experience with Bryan Cranston, I think I brought it up in the show before. Post Breaking Bad, I've had trouble with with Bryan Cranston in most movies. I just kind of feel like he's Godzilla included. I'm sorry.
Have you seen Larry Crown?
No, I haven't.
Dude, he has a line in that where he tells Julia Roberts, he's her husband.
Right.
And their marriage is on the fritz. Eddie's listening to this right now, knowing exactly what I'm about to say. And she finds his porn stash and they get into an argument. And he says, and this is supposed to be delivered with the utmost sincerity and conviction, "You're just jealous because I like big knockers and you don't have them."
And the Oscar goes to...
What's worse is Tom Hanks wrote that. I watched that whole
and
movie.
Directed it.
Yeah, that movie was like watching so much fall apart in front of me. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Post Breaking Bad, Walter White.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that I've ever sat down to watch a feature film post Breaking Bad with Bryan Cranston in it and go, okay, finally, they captured or he calmed down. It always feels to me like he's trying too hard or that they're giving him too much rope because he's Walter White, so he can do whatever he wants.
He has the smallest of parts in Contagion. That's good.
I don't even remember him.
Contagion,
if anything,
fucking rules.
Oh yeah, I know that. I don't remember Cranston. I know he's in Argo and he's okay in Argo, but he's also kind of anybody could have been there in that.
Anyone could have been in that movie, and I'll never rewatch it.
But all the other movies, man. There's this awards bait movie about a screenwriter, Trumbo. I think the movie might be called Trumbo.
Yeah.
It's bad. His performance, he's just so mannered and he's so I want an award. And in this, I think that maybe because I feel like he had the he had the opportunity to go big, right? And nobody would blame him because he's going against Kevin Hart. But instead, to me, he seems restrained. So maybe that's why I kind of just in general appreciate his performance here.
He got wind that it was going in the can for 2 years and said, all right, strap me up. Bryan Cranston's such a fascinating actor to begin with. I remember my dad telling me specifically, like, it took him a while because I got my parents the first season of Breaking Bad for Christmas one year because I'd heard it was great, and they always love getting invested in TV shows. And I remember him telling me it took him like the duration of the first season to really get into it because they're not stigma, but he was used to Bryan Cranston like as Hal and like doing just comedic stuff.
Right.
That like it's he's a very layered actor, and I don't think it's clear it took everybody a long time to come around on exactly how talented he is.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if it's a directing thing or maybe he went through a phase where he was just being big. I mean, you like that the Godzilla from 2014 or whatever, and he's not there even for the whole movie. But when he's there, he's just painting with broad strokes. But compared to everybody else, it's just like
he's walking through the door with his arms stretched out, just like spinning in circles.
Right. So,
and we do get that famous GIF of him clasping his mouth.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
God, I find myself almost like weekly having to defend that movie to someone. People just like to shit on that movie. It's awesome. I like my Godzilla fat. I can relate to it, all right? So, following the Untouchables and Upside that we've completed for episodes number 94 and 95, we will be not going too far from home. We're certainly not going to France for this one. We're staying here in Texas for the, of course, 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the counterpart, the 2003 remake starring Jessica Biel, R. Lee Ermey, Brian Aronofsky. No, that's the director.
What?
It's something Ofsky, the guy who plays Leatherface. He's the same guy who played Zangief in the 1994 Street Fighter movie.
You bring that guy up every few movies, and I'm like, he's also in this one?
Because the last time we brought him up with Hudson Hawk, he was the guy that was like, you want me to rape him?
Uh-huh.
I was like, what? Very excited. You've seen both of them, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Each once, and both of them a long time ago.
When the original starts, I'm just going to shut my computer, put my notebook to the side, put my hands behind my head. And
start quoting along.
I got it all up here, baby. No need for note-taking. Yeah, that episode's going to go long. Just all my stories and little like bits of trivia. Did you know? And that'll conclude the Autumn of Remakes. And what comes after that, well, you'll just have to hang around to find out. That being said, before we let y'all go, as we always do with the Contrarians, we close with plugs. First and foremost, our opening and closing track, we want to plug the Festive Years, who provide us with Last Stand and Summer of 99, thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend, listener, fellow podcaster, Hans Rothwieser, he did our logo. He has two podcasts. One is called Nación Combi. That's in Spanish. You can find it anywhere. And it's just about Peruvian stuff, mostly politics. He also has a podcast that's on iVox called Living in Peru. That's about immigrants to Peru, and that one's in English. So no matter which of the two major languages of the world you speak, you can listen to him. You can also contact him at Mildemonios at hotmail.com. That's MILDEMONIOS. If you want logos, if you want comics, if you want to just talk to him, you can read other stuff that he writes at mildemonios.pe, and you can also troll him on Twitter at Mildemonios. So
God bless.
Whatever you want to do with Hans, there's a way to reach him. Also, like I said, this will be a perennial plug until the weekend off, but Otherworlds Austin from our friend Reed, the Sci-Fi Film Festival here in our own city.
Yes.
December 5th
literally right
through
down the
8th.
street from where we're at right now.
Yes. Just go to otherworldsfilmfest.com, get your badge, come here, and hang out with a bunch of sci-fi nerds, including myself and Alex.
I talked over you there. What's the date on that?
December 5th through 8th.
Perfect. And real quick, to go back a pace, we literally just got a tweet response to our episode from Emily Higgins saying, I want a lot of conversation surrounding Nicole's awkward dancing. We said there was no real issues of race in this. I will say that was definitely one of them. She just goes out and dances like the whitest person ever, and Bryan Cranston's just like, "You're a great dancer."
And then he tries to make her look better by dancing in his wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it's still, he can't.
He had more fun than Philippe at his birthday party.
That is true. Also, I think that, I mean, yes, it's awkward dancing, but in the context of the movie, it's kind of a great moment for her. So, I'd rather see somebody dance awkwardly but happily.
Shit, all that was missing was her taking her glasses off before she did it. All right, for my plugs, I've been trying to be a bit more conscious about watching more movies, even if it just means having them on in the background while I do laundry and not necessarily devoting my full attention to it. One of those being The Fundamentals of Caring, a Netflix original movie that Julio mentioned has been in his Netflix queue forever, and it was in mine forever until I finally gave it a whirl last week. Mattis Rule, 90 minutes, did laundry while I had it on.
Perfect.
I don't buy Selena Gomez as this nomadic badass that they try to pass her off as. And the gentleman in the lead, Craig Roberts, is fine. Basically, if you're going to watch it, Paul Rudd, when we see Paul Rudd flex his acting muscles, it's kind of infrequent because you want to talk about a guy who's effortless, especially his comedies. It's just, here it is. So if you ever get a chance to watch it, I would recommend it just for Paul Rudd. He's tremendous in it. And as with any Contrarians recommendation, if you just had to take a stab in the dark of who you would cast to be Selena Gomez's dad in a movie, who would it be?
Josh Gad?
Bobby Cannavale.
Of course.
So the Contrarian seal, the stamp is put on it with that. My one true plug goes to on here, Julio and myself always talk about the rush and the serotonin release we get when we watch an older movie because it makes us feel like we're expanding our bounds. I had actually picked this up during one of the last Criterion sales and hadn't gotten around to watching it, but I watched A Night to Remember, the 1958 movie based on the Titanic.
Didn't they remake it with Kevin Hart like last year? Dude, no, you laugh like I'm making it up. Okay, they definitely remade it, and
yeah, it was called Titanic.
Am I thinking of a different movie with Knight and Kevin Hart? Keep going. Do your plug. I'm gonna find.
Yeah, I have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Night to Remember, great. It's a story about the Titanic. I mean, pretty sure that story is widely known. Black and white film.
Who plays DiCaprio?
It's one of those movies that like there's 100 people in it that all have some sort of story, and they all kind of intertwine together. It's obvious why it's a Criterion, just because the set design and the visuals of it all are breathtaking, and it's really engaging. We've talked about in the past having a hard time sometimes with Valley of the Dolls immediately comes to mind, that 40s, 50s, 60s acting.
Right.
And, like,
usually I think the biggest barrier for me to watch a classic movie is getting in the mindset to appreciate that.
This movie is not without that, but it's all done in a way that's believable because, the type of rich people that would have been aboard the Titanic, you can buy that they would talk like that and that type of way. And
that would say, neither me, her.
Nor her, I.
Nor her, I.
And so it's very easy to digest through a 2019 lens. Just, really impressive stuff. Very glad.
So
I own it and watched it.
I'm not an idiot. I just got stuff
apparently
mixed
Sean
up.
Connery's in it.
Apparently, you watched it.
Yeah, he has an uncredited role as steerage passenger. He doesn't actually have any speaking lines.
I was thinking of About Last Night, which is a 2014 remake of About Last Night, 1986.
With Rob Lowe?
Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Jim Belushi, right? And then About Last Night 2014 has Kevin Hart, Michael Ealy, and Regina Hall.
Okay.
So I guess Kevin Hart plays the Rob Lowe role? Because there's no way he's Jim Belushi. He could be. I don't know.
You realize that it has nothing to do with the Titanic.
Yes, but it has the word night. And it has Kevin Hart in it.
Abandoned ship, man. Made me feel smarter because I watched an old movie. No, it's great. and I think it's about 2 hours long. It's we talked about too with Walter Mitty. It's the classic old movie. Boat sinks, movie's over. Like, it's
you can digest this in your own time. Get the fuck out of the theater.
We got to clean this before the next show and get out of here.
A little bit more feedback. This didn't come in just now, but I screenshotted it
Off the wire.
Now, her friend Corey just tweeted after listening to the original Nightmare on Elm Street episode. I wonder if he's less happy about our thoughts after he listens to the remake. But he said, "Great episode, guys. Though John Saxon could have gotten a little bit more love. I mean, come on, guys. He wasn't Enter the Dragon and Cannibal Apocalypse. That's the dad. That's which I think. I mean, we gave him the nod. I'm pretty sure I said that." Outside of Johnny Depp, he was the only other real actor.
At the time, he would have been the Git.
Yeah. And then also, I told you via text, but I still wanted to mention it on the show. Our friend Sam from Movie Reviews and 20 Qs, he messaged me to ask me to let you know that he apologized for making fun of you liking The Office so much, because I guess he's been rewatching it, binging it with his kid, and he loves it and the kid loves it. I don't remember if this whole Office conversation happened while we were recording with him, the Muppets episode that was on his show, or if it was before we recorded and we're just talking about it, but or maybe after. I don't know. So I don't know if it's like online somewhere, like him,
out
like
there
record,
in the zeitgeist.
right? Record of him making fun of you and saying like, well, yeah, of course you like the American Office because you're American.
Yeah.
But now he's like, no, actually, the American Office is really cool.
Oh yeah, it's great. And to a certain point, that's fitting because yesterday or today or 2 days ago, somewhere in the past few days, was the 10-year mark of the episode where Jim and Pam got married.
Did anybody do anything?
No, I just saw something Netflix posted about it. My reason for bringing that up is because I said it was a good show until a point, and
That's the point.
That's the point.
And yeah, don't tell me you didn't cry when Michael left.
God, it was a mess. No, there was still good stuff after that, but hindsight being what it is, that's what the show should have ended.
In the final bit of just cleanup or podcast-related news before my plugs, and I should have mentioned this probably last episode, maybe even 2 episodes ago. We had another spot of the IMDb Journey show, and we got our asses kicked once again at the draft.
Real bad.
Even though we did it correctly, except for the part where we once again drafted with our heart. And so, of course, we didn't go for easy
I thought we were going to
picks.
do all right.
Yeah, but, there was a part of me that knew that if they got stuff like Get Out, which they did, it's just people love it way more than you or I. Yeah, so it was just, we did all right. I mean, all things considered, actually, well, our percentage was worse than the last draft we did with them. But I think that at least now I feel like, well, at least we tried harder.
They got our number.
Yeah.
We're going to have the trilogy fight that no one asked for.
All right, so actual plugs. I just have 2 brief ones. One, I finally watched HBO's Chernobyl. 5 episodes, so you can break it up into 10 half-hour episodes so you can digest it more easily, Alex. But it's really good.
I've heard good things.
Yes, and it's written. The reason I finally binged it is because it's written by Craig Mazin, who has a great screenwriting podcast, and he's always at the Austin Film Festival. So I was like, I don't want to run into him in a couple of weeks and kind of have to admit that I haven't watched Chernobyl. It's also amazing because, he won an Emmy for writing it or whatever. And if you don't listen to his podcast, Craig Mazin is mostly known for writing, Hangover 2, Hangover 3, Identity Thief. And it's just the kind of thing where, you don't associate his name, even though he's just really good at screenwriting, but you don't associate the movies that he writes with awards. And then suddenly he writes Chernobyl, where he's just the only writer he's a showrunner, and he gets all this recognition. And then everybody that listens to the podcast, they're like, yeah, we knew. And then I said on Twitter I was gonna plug them because I really liked this last episode they did. But the Countdown is a podcast from Australia that I've been listening to for a while now, maybe a year, and they've been around for a while. But it's just simple concept. It's 2 friends and they just every episode they pick a topic and they do their top 10 of that topic, and they just kind of like, you know, make fun of each other, tease each other. They've known each other forever. You get that from their chemistry, so it's a lot of fun. And one of them is just outrageously over the top, and the other one is a little more tempered. So the dynamic is a lot of fun just to begin with, and then depending on what they're making their lists about, it can be even funnier or insightful. But generally, you know, I listen to it because it makes me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had an episode, just their most recent episode, that was the top 10 movies that taught us something about dating.
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly they're getting really personal, because of course it's a very personal topic, and they have to tell stories with their picks that just really get about into their personal lives. And it was just as funny as they always are, but it was also it was pretty delightful. And in my mind, I was like, this is, I think, the perfect episode that you would give to somebody to listen to the show, because it's not just that they're funny, but it's also, wow, surprise, they're human.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, I knew that because I've been listening to them for like a year, but you know, you can take the shortcut and listen to this episode and really get the whole meal in just like, you know, 90 minutes or however long it is. It was really good. It was easily one of my favorite episodes of a podcast I've listened to this year. So if you're looking for new things to listen to, or even if you want to listen to like give it like a one episode try, the Countdown movie and TV reviews, that's them. Of course, I'll put the link with the show notes, but you know, you can just Google the Countdown and go from there.
Yeah, we got that in the queue after your recommendation. All right, so as always, we appreciate y'all listening to the Contrarians. Fire up your chainsaws for the next 2 episodes.
Well, actually, before the next
numeric episodes.
Yeah, well, so the first
canonical episodes.
Yeah, that will be the beginning of the new Contrarians year. Year 6 starts with Chainsaw Massacre original, but before that,
we need a big fancy new logo and opening. Year 6, the Contrarians. But yes, any longtime listeners know what comes next before the venture into the new year. It'll be the Contrarians year retrospective, and also a reflection over the previous 5 years.
And
it's time to
awards.
give out some awards.
Yes.
The Embreys and the Rouseys. If you're not familiar with them, be sure to listen to our awards episode to get a proper explanation as to why we hand these out.
I think I'm pretty sure I'm gonna make a little page on our webpage that we can link to that has the full explanation and the history of them and what the nominees are this year, just so that people are caught up, because you know we still have 2 or 3 weeks before that episode is actually released.
Yeah.
And so people can kind of like play along and maybe try to guess what our winners, what our picks are gonna be. So
yeah, that'll be the next episode. Following that, if I can get my fucking chainsaw analogy in, put some skin on your face, fire up a chainsaw, get some barbecue ready. We're going down to Texas. Thank you for listening to The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
The summer of 1999.